Unique New York. Great Odin's Raven.
I've talked to someone about Odin here recently. It was an old like Thor comic storyline that I was talking about that was kind of cool with Thanos and the Time Stone. And I don't, it wasn't the original Infinity War gauntlet, but like there was a run of comics where he got the Time Stone and the Avengers fought him and he defeated them by making them all super old. Like he just used the Time Stone to just age them all to the point of like weakness and senility. But then when he aged Thor, it turns out that the older Norse gods get, the more powerful they get. So he accidentally made Thor, like more powerful than Odin and powerful enough to defeat him himself. And that was kind of fun.
Huh.
Look at us starting with some nerd lore.
If it's not in a movie, I don't know.
Gosh, you are such a friggin' Gen Zer. Goodness.
No, I'm not. Not at all, actually. I don't think.
I don't even know what generation I am. I think I'm technically a millennial.
I think you're technically a millennial. I know I'm a millennial.
Yeah, then I probably am too. Because I'm at least 2 years younger than you, so.
Yeah, at least. I think the millennial phase is, hi, everybody. I promise we're not just like rambling.
We are.
We are. But yeah, I think the millennial, they're like 15-ish years, I think, is each thing, isn't it? Something like that.
I have no idea. All the random knowledge I have trapped in my brain, none of it relates to this. None.
Right. It's more like Thanos and nerd stuff.
Yes. And psychology.
Yes. Ooh, what a great segue. Once again, the segue king.
So tonight we're going to try to stay on script. We're going to try to keep it to an hour and stay kind of short. And this one, we're going to talk a little bit about psychology, hence the script pun. 2 different psychology studies that we kind of came across and talked about. Doug found one and I opened my big mouth and said, oh yeah, I studied that in college. I wrote a paper on that and da-da-da-da. And so now we're going to talk about it a little bit. And then another related one. And then we're going to talk about the Backrooms. And that's to include Bonnie Blue update. We've got a Bonnie Blue update that's, kind of backroom qualified. So,
I mean, someone's going in the back room.
I've got very little dad stuff for tonight. If anything, I'm sure a lot of the psychology stuff will probably tie into dad stuff, especially once we start talking about the SCAR experiment. There's a lot there you can take to apply to your kids and how you teach things to your kids and how you talk to your kids and how you present yourself as a parent. So I guess that'll probably be our dad correlation, unless you've got a dad story and a dad fail. I don't currently have one for this evening.
I mean, not really. We've had some sort of weird sickness or two running through the house. So, one kiddo right now is, the heat of 1,000 suns coming off of his head at the moment. But he's still acting mostly normal. So I guess that's good. So we'll see how he's doing tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, the only real noteworthy thing is me. I've had my doctor checkups recently and I'm mostly normal. So that's good.
That is good. Everything post-surgery is going the way it's supposed to then.
Yeah, apparently everything's where it's supposed to be. But I have this random thing. So some of my scars from everything they've bubbled up a little bit, and it's called keloid, Keloid in the medical community. And it's one of those things that they don't really know why it happens. But also, if it's something that doesn't like go away on its own, the only real way to get rid of it is like sort of dermatological, like plastic surgery-ish kinds of techniques with like lasers and stuff like that. And even if you fix it, it could still come back. But it's not dangerous. It's just ugly, annoying, itchy, that kinds of thing. So
your wife's already used to all of that, like dealing with you, so it shouldn't be really much of an issue, right?
Right, except I'm itchy to her instead of this.
Listen, I give my wife hives all the time with the stress I add to her life. Like I'm sure I make her itch and twitch.
Yeah, so I don't know. I might be dealing with that, but it's super weird. Again, somebody someday will discover this. It's only the 2 scars from the actual surgery, but not the like chest tube sites that I mentioned that they pulled out later, and not the pacemaker scar. So something in that like procedure or day or timing has been reacting. It's been like 6 weeks. So the other ones had time to react. So I don't know. There's some weird biology thing there that someone will probably get a PhD on someday. I don't know.
That is weird. Huh.
Yeah.
I guess sort of related. I spent a lot of time dealing with doctors this week, and I have the pleasure of looking forward to my first knee surgery soon. So that'll be interesting.
Oh, that's fun.
Yep. Yep. They're gonna go in and scope it and see if they can clean up some damaged stuff and trim some things. And then they're gonna see what they want to do for the larger surgery, where they're gonna go in and mess around with cartilage a little more seriously and this giant edema on the underside of my patella and some structural things. And yeah, that's gonna be fun. So I've got that to look forward to. That'll be great. Excited.
Hey, we could have a surgery story 2.0.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully mine's not nearly as invasive as yours, right?
Oh,
Let's
and
not take it
sprawling.
there. Oh gosh.
It's like, see, and then I took his sternum. All
All right, let's
right,
talk some
let's get to
psychology.
it. Yay.
We're gonna start with the Rosenhan experiment since that was the one that started the whole thing, or where do you want to go?
Yeah, let's start with that. Yes, let's start with that. Start.
Am I starting with the
Yeah,
topic?
you're the well. Okay, I brought it to you, but then you were like, "Oh yeah, I studied it in college, and I wrote 5 term papers on it, and I know
I
all about everything
I
to know about
wrote
everything about
one
it."
paper on it.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Goodness. All right. So
So,
yes. So Tom's got 2 useless bachelor degrees, one of which is in psychology. I shouldn't say useless, but useless in getting a job without a graduate degree. Like a
that's
degree,
good. I
a
think
bachelor's in psychology doesn't get you anywhere.
let's have a quick contest. Whose degrees are more useless?
English and psychology, and go.
Philosophy and Greek and Roman civilization.
Yeah, maybe mine are more useless than yours. Then you might have me
I
there.
don't know. I can
It's
only
close.
You can write or teach. You got
Yeah,
2.
I guess that's true.
Or I could
Well,
be a tour guide, I suppose.
there you go. There you go. Maybe there's something
See?
in there's a history line there for you somewhere.
Something maybe. I don't know.
Podcast host. Yeah. Huh?
Uh, uh,
Less
uh,
less handsome co-host on a moderately successful podcast. That
mhm.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's working great.
So the Rosenhan experiment took place back in the early 70s. The psychologist who ran the study was David David. It was a D, something Rosenhan, and he published it. The name of his publication was on being sane in insane places, I think,
Sounds right.
which is pretty perfect. Essentially, he
Mhm.
took 8 perfectly mentally healthy people, and he had them show up to psychiatric hospitals across the United States and pretend that they weren't as mentally healthy as they were. And they weren't acting totally loony and kooky. They weren't acting totally wild and crazy. The only thing that they did was they started when they showed up for their screening, they said that they heard voices. And the voices that they heard, he gave them certain words that they had to say. So he said when they do your screening, tell them that you hear voices saying thud, empty, hollow, like these 3 words over and over, and you're just hearing voices say this. Other than that, you have to act perfectly normal, perfectly sane. And once they admit you, you immediately stop hearing these voices. You don't pretend any further to be crazy. You literally fake this one symptom to get in the door, and then you stop. The 8 people that he had do this included doctors. There was a psychologist, which is interesting. There was
Awesome.
there's a psychologist and a psychiatrist. So you had like the side who knows about the medication and what to prescribe, as well as the one who's just a psychologist. There was a children's doctor, I think. There were kind of normal or, just everyday normal people. So not everybody had a degree, but you were representing some pretty educated folks with these 8 patients that they brought in there. And again, you fake hearing words, and as soon as they admit you, you stop faking any symptoms and you behave completely normally and you see what happens. And that was it. That was the whole basis of the experiment. What happened was that every single one of them, all 8 at these 12 or 13 different hospitals across the country, every single one was admitted every single time. And they were diagnosed with things like manic depression and schizophrenia and some kind of, it wasn't an anxiety disorder, but something similar to what we'd call today general anxiety disorder. The shortest stay was like about a week, and the longest day was, I want to say, like 2 months.
It
Where
was
they kept,
something long. It was like, yeah, 50 some days or something like that
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 sounds right.
they had. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was around 2 months was the
It was
longest. So
something
50 some odd days would track.
yeah.
But essentially, these 8 people were admitted multiple times, these 12 hospitals. No one ever detected that they were fake. Not one person was ever found out as being faking these symptoms or being a phony or being a, what do you call them, a pseudo patient or a pseudo whatever. Not one person ever got found out by staff. The staff interpreted all this normal behavior as further symptoms. And remember, they're not representing any symptoms once they're in the door. They're acting normally. But as ties into the next study we're going to talk about, the staff interpreted even perfectly normal behavior as symptoms of these mental health disorders. What they found out later is that other patients often kind of called them out and said, I don't think this person belongs here. I don't think this person's really crazy. I don't think this person's. So there was this little bit of like the other patients knew what was going on, but the staff, the nurses, the orderlies, they had no clue what was going on. They took basic behaviors that they were kind of told to do and to remember and to take notes on so they could present them later in the journal and they could be recorded and presented sort of empirically. I did this day and it was interpreted as that. I did this day. Some of the things that they did were like getting to the cafeteria early for meals and waiting in line outside the cafeteria. And when they did, the doctors noted that that was oral acquisitive syndrome, like that was something that they actually called out because they showed up early. If they were talking too much, then they had social disorders. If they weren't talking enough, then they were displaying withdrawal symptoms. If they took notes during like group counselings or one-on-one counselings, they diagnosed them with compulsive writing behavior. If they refused to take notes, then it was it was something to do with
This is why you needed to
anti-authority.
explain this, because I just had like the surface level.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do it then. But if they didn't take notes or they didn't do something right away, it was like anti-authoritative something syndrome. It was wild, these normal behaviors, and they just kept going with it. Every normal behavior was essentially another symptom of this mental illness that they had decided these people had. They were prescribed medication while they were in the hospitals. They did not take the medication. They faked swallowing all of it, but they never took any of the medication. The estimated number, they didn't count each single pill like mathematically, but they figured out, ballpark how much they were prescribed over the course of this time. These 8 different perfectly healthy people through 12 hospitals, they believed they were prescribed over 2,000 pills during the time they were there. And the pills they were taking were things that were like psychiatric medicine that affected chemicals in your brain, things like thorazine, things like lithium, things like proloxin, like things that people were taking for schizophrenia and what we now know is bipolar. It was manic polar disorder back then, I think. And they were just giving these things like candy to these people, and thank God they didn't take them. But lots of medication was diagnosed. Everything they did was interpreted as a sign of a mental illness. Eventually, they get out, okay? Eventually, they all get released because you can't hold people forever for those symptoms. Nobody went and had an ice pick stuck in their eye with their brain scrambled. Like, they didn't have to go that far with any of them, which is good. But when they released them, they didn't release them as healthy. There's a diagnosis, and then you've got your discharge paperwork. Not one person on their discharge was diagnosed as a healthy person or a mentally fit person. Instead, they were all charged with crap like schizophrenia in remission, like random stuff, dormant bipolar or dormant polar manic polar disorder. I can't talk. I need coffee. But everything was like something was dormant or something was in remission. So the assumption that's going to follow these people around, if they had been real people using real names going throughout their life, is that anywhere they go, they're going to be diagnosed with this mental illness that's just kind of presumed to never go away, to always be there. And they were healthy all the way from the get-go. So it's interesting. And then they released the study findings, and he published it in Journal of Science, one of the real basic ones back then that was very popular. And when he did, the hospitals like lashed back out because he called out the hospitals in the paper. He listed their names. Like there was no holding back. He was like, yeah, these are the hospitals. They admitted them. Here's some of the doctors. Like he dropped names in the community, and the hospitals were angry and they were critical. Like one of them actually criticized the study and like wrote back a letter and said, this is all a lie and this is all a farce. This could never happen. It's not possible that this would ever happen. And he like went off and listed why people wouldn't be, why they wouldn't be admitted into the hospital. And so Rosenhan did like the best thing. When that letter was
The best
published,
thing. It's
this is
the
the best
best
thing.
thing.
Oh, it is.
It's the best thing.
This is my favorite part of the whole experiment, actually. And this is the part that I focused on in most of what I wrote. He responds to the guy's letter and the hospital criticisms. And he says, you know what? I'm going to send out another wave of pseudo patients. I'll do it over the next, I think he said 4 months, like over the
He
next
said
4
over the next
months.
4 months, I'll send people in.
Yep.
And I
And
think
I
he said something like,
challenge you to identify them. Like, I
he said
dare
like
you to pick them
one.
out.
He's like, pick. I think he said pick. Yeah, exactly. Just see if you can find
Yep.
them out. Yeah,
Yep.
prove me
Yep.
wrong.
Prove me wrong. I dare you. And he said, I'll do it within the next like 4 months. And then over the next 4 months, all these hospitals flagged 41 different patients as fake, as his pseudo patients, but he never sent a single one.
Zero.
So now they're diagnosing people who are really being sent there because they have mental health issues as fake. They're seeing imposters when there are none, where none exist. Now they're seeing that. So he's got these people going, he's got them looking over their shoulder. He's living in their head rent free. It's fantastic. And it shined a light on how we were diagnosing mental health. And it shined a light on a bunch of psychiatric principles, like how your perception affects or how context affects your perception and vice versa. Does something have context because we perceive it, or do we perceive something through the context and assign a label and then it sticks? It showed a lot of how sort of society and doctors especially are not immune to sort of applying labels to people and then not going back to like reconsider it and change it. That once you label somebody, that label sticks, and that human beings are just not good at going back and changing their mind about things and saying, oops, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this person's not a sociopath. Maybe this person's not suffering from schizophrenia. Maybe this person isn't suffering from, some sort of narcissistic, grandiose anxiety disorder. Once they labeled them, the label stuck no matter what. And they found behaviors to sort of strengthen their opinion and their position. And we see this with arguments all the time now. But it really kind of shone a light on a lot of these and put it out in front of the public in a way that, kind of couldn't be ignored. People had to look at this now because the number of women, especially, being admitted to these places for something as simple as depression, for not being an obedient wife, for postpartum and struggles with that. I mean, things that we now understand are very normal and very typical. Women were being committed to mental health hospitals at a really high rate during this period. And so this really was important, at least in that regard, but to shine a light on how we treated mental health as a whole in this country. And it was a big time study. And I mean, it wasn't without its criticisms. I mean, like the sample size was tiny. There were technically you're supposed to have control variables, and they didn't really have a control variable. A lot of the stuff they were putting down as data was kind of hard to verify because, again, you couldn't just take notes and say they gave me 6 pills of this today. And a lot of it was kind of on memory, and you took notes where you could, but a lot of the details, might be off by a little bit here and there. So it had a lot of criticisms, it had a lot of fuss. But at the end of the day, it looks at how we interpret behavior and shows that we're not good at it, which is something poker players all the time. Oh, I can see this and I can see this and tells this. And I love that because human beings are just awful lie detectors in general. And we're not good at seeing things like tells and determining. That sort of thing takes a lot of training and it takes a lot of practice. And it takes a lot of going back to what your assumptions are and testing them and revisiting things. And we are not good at changing our initial thoughts and opinions on things. And the study kind of showed that. It shined a light on a lot of really interesting things. This was a really fun study. And I liked that it was critical of our mental health program and our medical program in this country. And I really love when he was just like, okay, I'm going to send some people out, pick them out. And he didn't send anybody. It was such a brilliant move. And it's the kind of thing I would do. It's brilliant and I love it. And it's devious and deceitful and cunning and all for a good cause. And I approve. It applies to just so many different things in society, like criminal justice and evaluations, like professional evaluations. If you get labeled in a certain way your first year at a job, that label's probably going to stick. If you get labeled as a career criminal or something, that's
that one
probably
hits
going to
close to
stick.
home.
Yep. Medical diagnosis. I mean, there's so many different ways that this phenomena is applicable today. And it matters. And it's interesting and just a great one. So when Doug sent me this, I got super excited. I got a little bit of a psychology brain hard on for this one. But I'm glad we had to talk about it a little bit because this is a fun one.
Woo, that was great. That was like 10 minutes.
Yeah, you're done. Easy.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny you mentioned like my little commentary that I can put in along the way. It's funny that you mentioned like getting a label at a job. Way back when, at one of my jobs that I had, first couple of months, I got labeled as kind of unserious and not just not being mature, basically for the job. It was because I'd like fart around. I'd like throw a ball against the wall. I'd, just have fun with people and laugh. And I was a lot of times engaging with some of the supervisors in the exact same activities that they were doing. And people said I was just kind of immature. And I kind of rankled at that. Like, what? I'm not immature. And I grew to kind of despise it a little bit. And I pretty much spent a whole year coming in and just not having any fun, like just doing my work, head down, kind of like, yeah, this job kind of sucks, but whatever. I'm trying to like look for other stuff kind of in the meantime after a couple of months. And after about a year of literally doing nothing, someone comes along and goes, Doug, you've really matured recently. I was like, what? Like, no, I actually just stopped talking, basically.
Yeah.
But that's what it took. It took months and months and months of not the thing to even get a different opinion somehow.
Yeah.
Mm. My other little favorite tidbit about that study was the other patients. They said that even in some of them were private conversations too, like the actual insane patients would come up to the people privately and be like, "You're not one of us, are you?" They knew. They didn't even try to report them. They were just like, "What are you doing here?"
Yep. There's a scene in Psych. I know we've talked about Psych a couple of times, but not in a while. But there's a scene in
No.
Psych where they're trying to investigate something happening at a mental institution. It's a guy gets convicted of a crime, and they seek insanity as a plea, and the judge finds him mentally incompetent, so he sends him to this mental health facility, and so it's a much lighter sentence. It's like a mental health facility for the extremely wealthy. So the guy's roaming the grounds. He's wearing like a 75,000 thread count linen bathrobe. They're getting gourmet meals. They're doing yoga by the pool twice a day. Like it's super cush. But the detective wants to prove, no, this guy's not crazy. He's faking it. Like he's insane. He killed this guy. He should be in jail. So they send Sean in, the fake psychic. They send him in to pretend to be crazy. And he hams it up and he has such a good time being a cornball. But they're in a group session, and one of the guys is like, Sean's full of baloney. He doesn't belong here. He's not like us." And they start laying into him. And so Sean has to like fool this guy. So he goes super crazy and starts pretending he's like from the future and he's there to chastise them. He starts throwing medication everywhere and jumping up and down on chairs like Tom Cruise on an Oprah couch. And it's just it's a fun episode. That was a good one. Sorry, that's my random sitcom
Well,
sidetrack.
right. Well, and to actually be serious about it, I mean, the thing is funny, but the reaction by the hospitals, first of all, to not have any person in any of those hospitals go, "Ooh, F, we really need to," like, they did not sit there and think, even out of their own pride, they didn't sit there and think, "We need to lock our shit down tighter so that this doesn't happen to us again."
Right.
What they tried to just discredit and, blame game and stuff like that, which ended up biting them in the ass more. But I thought it was interesting because, like you said, they would say, "Well, they didn't get the amount of medications right, or they didn't get this right, or whatever. Like this part isn't true." And they kept trying to nitpick at the little side portions of it, but they didn't actually go after the main point, which was these people were all easily able to get in, and they should not have been there more than a couple of days, much less
Yeah.
how
2
long they
months.
actually
Yeah.
were.
Yep.
It's, you can try to nitpick the argument, but there's still the elephant in the room, if you will. And I think a lot of in philosophy, there's a lot of that too. People will say, "Well, there's this factor that disproves this, and there's this factor that disproves that," but you're really not engaging the argument
Right.
as a whole. And I saw that in here a lot. But yeah, the other thing too that I thought out of this was it made me question when I first heard about it, what's going on with the quote real patients.
Yeah.
If people actually with some mental instability, if it isn't somehow being amplified either by the facility or the setting or the drugs or anything like that too, potentially. Because if you can take a healthy person and stick this on them, what happens with an unhealthy person?
Yep.
So that's
Yeah,
what,
they're reinforcing that label, and so are you ever going to move past that with someone who's really demonstrating things that fit this category? Yeah.
well, and I'm not even doing some wholesome, like, you know, if you believe in them, some of them will be able to work hard and kind of become contributing members of society again and work on themselves. I'm not even talking about that. Just, where some of these medications could have been drawing out other things because you have one condition,
Oh,
maybe
sure.
you're more
Yeah.
susceptible to something else, especially when something's being done chemically to your brain. Like,
Yeah.
could more problems have been caused?
And
And will we actually know?
yeah. And
We
you know
can't
what?
really sift through that.
I found our dad tie-in. We can do a dad tie-in with the Rosenhan experiment.
Oh,
Mm.
wonderful.
Yeah. So my son had a lot of behavioral, episodes when he was younger, and we figured he might be on the spectrum somewhere. And there was a lot of concern on our part because he demonstrated a lot of the signs of autism at certain periods of his age. And for a while, we both thought he was on the spectrum somewhere, and we started putting teams in place at school to kind of help take care of him. We had observational stuff done, but then he outgrew a lot of this, and it was something that I saw, and I talked to his teachers. And I mean, he's always been brilliant, so we're not worried about the intelligence. He's ridiculously smart. He's way ahead of his grade, and that was actually one of the things that they flagged as a possible symptom. But he outgrew a lot of the behavioral stuff, and he still struggles with some of it to get through. Like he's got some maturing to do, but he outgrew some really big things that had us worried and had people flagged. Had him flagged for things. My wife and my mom both kind of decided he was autistic, like with high levels of confidence because of some of the behaviors he was exhibiting when he was 4, 5, 6. And there were a lot of things with my background and my little bit of knowledge in psychology. I was like, he doesn't avoid eye contact. He empathizes with other people's emotions. He's able to describe and interpret other people's emotions. He's the one that's empathetic in the family of all the kids. Like when you have a bad day, he'll walk up and hug you and be like, I'm sorry you're sad. I don't know what's going on, but I'm sorry you're sad. There's a lot of stuff that changed over a couple of years that made me think he's probably not autistic. And I didn't realize how dug in my wife and my mom were about this, because Granny spends a lot of time with her grandkids. She helps us out when we need a babysitter. So she gets a lot of time with him. They had straight up decided he was autistic, like he just was. And we went ahead and we did the testing for it. I really didn't feel like we needed to, but my wife wanted to. And so, of course, I'm going to do that. I acknowledge I
You're
don't
not
have all the
stupid.
answers. Right. Happy spouse, happy house, and all that. But also, like, who am I to say I've got it right? I know I can be wrong as easy as anyone else. Maybe my bias is getting in the way. So we went and we had him tested, and shocker, he doesn't have autism. And ADHD looks like it's probably there, but that's a lot of kids that deal with that. But talking to the therapist, like my wife and I saw him very differently. And we did the survey and the questionnaire, and we answered some questions very differently. We talked about it, and a lot of them, she was like, "Okay, yeah, I guess so. I don't see that, but okay." And for some of them, I did the same thing. But then he went and he sat down with his doctor and did this testing and did this interview, and she was like, "Yeah, he's an extremely functional, very intelligent kid, and I get why he's triggering some of these things. Like, there's definitely some things on here that he triggers and some criteria that he meets. But the fact that he's outgrown a lot of these behaviors and he didn't do these things." And she basically said what I'd been saying for a couple of years. But my wife and my mom were like shocked when she said, no, he's not autistic. They were shocked. And I was like, no, I didn't think so. It's that label that was applied early on with early age behaviors that track and that makes sense. If he'd have gotten tested 2 years ago, they probably would have said, yep, I think he's autistic. But it's amazing the stuff that he grew out of it and the trend, the growth that he made. Now, no, he's not. And that label would have never left him. Like if we'd had him tested at that age and they'd have said, yes, he's autistic, that label would have never left him. He'd have had it for life. Probably would have been, maybe there's some kind of medication plan that would have been in place. I don't really know how that would have been treated. A lot of behavioral therapy would have happened. He would have been treated differently. And instead, we worked with him and we let him go through this stuff. And it turns out he doesn't have it. But in my wife and my mom's mind, like until that test came back, he was. It's interesting to me. And it's that not fake, it's that mistaken label. We're not good at taking those labels away once we apply them. And I mean, apparently I am. I guess I'm just good like that. But
It's probably
other
just
human
dormant,
beings,
just like those other people.
right. I just find it interesting. And I think it's probably something we see so much more, neurodivergent diagnoses for kids these days and behaviors. And we see so much So much ADHD, so much autism. We're relearning the autism spectrum as we go right now. There was a study that came out like a month ago that basically says our entire understanding and rating of it is garbage and should just be thrown away because we're not doing it right. I think that it's really dangerous for us to put these labels on our kids sometimes if something is at all subjective or if there's any room for growth to get out of it. And I wonder how many kids have been labeled early on and never get to escape that label, never get the chance to outgrow it. Because, like I said, if we'd had him tested 2 years ago, I think they would have said, "Yeah, he's got autism. He's up high in the scale," and then he would have been treated differently ever since, and that diagnosis would have been with him for life. And I think it's probably more important than we realize. Labels we put on our kids, not even with a diagnosis, but just, "Oh, that kid's a troublemaker. I don't want him hanging out with my kid," or "This kid's that." A lot of that stuff is based on a snap decision from one incident. So as parents, we should probably be mindful of the labels that we're putting on our kids' friends. It's probably something we should all be a little bit more mindful of.
Okay.
Okay. There,
I mean,
I tied it into dadding. That's good.
you know what though? So it is interesting to say stuff like that because I mean, well, the other thing that I immediately go to is a kid gets labeled that way and uses it to his or her advantage.
Yeah.
Oh, they just think I'm this, so now I get to coast through X or not do Y or even just do it anyway and use it as the crutch or the fallback or oh so sorry I'm this.
Maybe, but I'll bet you there's less of that happening at the young ages because I think if you
Well,
tell a kid who's 5 or 6 you're
yeah.
autistic, I don't think that they're gonna know enough to be like, "No, I'm not. I'm gonna get away with that." They're probably gonna go like, "Oh, what does that mean?" And it becomes a part of their identity. I think
Well, I
that's
know, but or the other kids, call them out on it depending upon the age and the social stuff too. Other kids go, "Pff, no, you're not." Like,
yeah.
or well, they go, well, then you come to school one day and they're like, "We're all autistic." And you're like, "Wait a minute here, maybe we should check this."
This feels like a South Park episode. Like, I feel like that
Yeah,
should be a South Park
right.
that's the kind of
That
thing
does
they would do to call
that
attention
is
to
the
this,
kind of
right?
thing. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right. It's funny because yeah, we I never really made this tie-in, but something that was really big, especially for my wife early on, with the moment we had more than one child, once or twice, I would get all hot and I would be like to one of them, "You're just you're doing what your sister does." And like as soon as she could, my wife was like, "Do not compare them." Like,
Don't do that.
absolutely, like, "Dude, don't do that." Yeah, do not make it like, versus each other. Do
Yeah.
not try to say one like, do not even make it potentially that one's better or worse than the other, like, for
Yeah.
anything. It's just different, and I was like, she's probably right. That makes a good case, but
But we all do it. You gotta catch yourself, and
I'll
you
do
gotta
it.
stop when you
You
can, but
know
we all do it.
you know where I'm the worst at? Like, I'm very much, like, accountability style with my kids. Like, "No, what do you really think?" "Oh, I accidentally did this." "No, you didn't. That wasn't an accident. I saw it." Like, own up
Yep.
to it. And but if it's someone else's kid, like, I'll see one thing and be like, that kid's a dumbass." And I just see that forever. I don't know. I forget that my kids are their ages. Like, my 7-year-old a lot, I assume she's, like, 16.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes "How do you not understand this?" And she's like, "I don't know." I have to remember, like, "Oh my god, you're 7. I need to be nicer."
I do that a lot. I forget. So, again, I'm lucky to have very intelligent kids who are my oldest is very mature for her age. My son, he's a boy his age. Like, he's not
He's
mature
a
for his
boy.
age. He's very
Boys are not
smart for his
mature for
age.
their age until
Yeah.
they're we're coming up on it actually, I
Yeah,
think.
maybe like mid-40s, late 40s,
Yeah, like
maybe.
the event horizon for us is coming on maturity.
Yeah. So he's very much a young boy, and I love him. He's my boy. It's totally fine. But what I find myself doing a lot is forgetting that my youngest is only 4, that she's not where they are, and that I hold her to
Ugh.
standards that I hold them to, and every once in a while, my wife is like, "Hey, Tom, she's 4." She's not 10, you can't expect the same thing from her. And I forget stuff like that all the time, and then I do that with my son and my daughter too. I hold him to standards that I've got set in my mind for her, and that's also not fair. It's it's interesting how we do that, how we kind of default to that.
Yeah. You know what, one more thing that this study reminded me of, and I'll try to keep it short. I could try to find the article forever ago, but it was labeled "The Death of Expertise." And it reported same kind of thing. This guy came up with this theory, tested it rigorously over months, years, multiple times, etc. And what he did is he had groups of sort of like generally smart people, sort of think of the jack of all trades, master of none type of
Yep.
personality. He took groups of those people, and then some of them, when they volunteered, groups of experts, but otherwise just compared them to experts' reported opinions and reports and writings and stuff like that.
Sure.
And he just picked little like questions, predictions to make. And it could be as simple as, will it rain tomorrow? Will this stock go up or down over the next 30 days? Stuff like that. And then he did do some bigger decisions, but he labeled these people as smart foxes and whatever else. And the groups of the jack of all trades people consistently outperformed experts, even in the expert's own field, like
Huh.
constantly. And the biggest takeaway from that study was not just the outperformance, because he said, well, these people are more likely to not view things as I'm the expert and I know what I'm doing. They were more likely to take other factors and consider those and try to connect dots, even when they weren't obvious.
Yeah.
But he said the interesting thing was that when the experts were reported wrong, they always had some excuse or something where if this had been different, they would have been right.
Sure.
Whereas the non-experts went, "Oh shit, I was wrong," and they tried to learn from it and remember when they were wrong for their future stuff.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
it was a really interesting concept. Where he basically, in so many words, said the experts are actually wrong more often than just generally smart people. When you group them together, that was the other key though too. Any one random smart person was similar to or slightly behind any one single expert, but when you got the groupthink, that was where it accelerated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So this thing was a perfect example of that. These hospitals with all the people, they also all kind of assumed we know what we're doing. We know what you're talking about. You're here, so you have to be crazy. And they all just trusted themselves and kept finding the thing they knew instead of the thing they didn't know.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Scars?
Scar scars?
Scars.
Do you want to take the lead on this one?
I'll try. You're so much better at this stuff than I am. So this other study occurred where they took just regular, average, everyday folk, and they told them, hey, we're going to send you into job interviews and we want you to report, take note, as much as you can of basically how you're treated by the interviewer. And they were told that these interviewers are, otherwise just normal, unsuspecting folk. No one else is in on this, only you are. But the one caveat they did was they would put these basically scars, disfigurements, really elaborate makeup to show, bad burns, things like that, on people's prominent areas, faces, heads, stuff like that. And then they would show them and say, okay, this is how you're going to look in the interview. And we want you to try to figure out, if they're looking at you, treating you differently, all that. And then right before they sent them in, they said, okay, let's just do some final touches to make sure it, looks good and everything else, so that it doesn't, wear off or anything. And during the final touches, they would remove the makeup so the people look completely normal again. Then they sent them into the interview without knowing that they took off the elaborate makeup. And pretty much 100%, every single one of these people came back out of the interview and said they were mistreated, prejudiced against. The other person wasn't taking me seriously. They couldn't stop looking at the scar or the burn or whatever. And it was just across the board that, oh yeah, I was treated unfairly. And then they revealed that these people, just kidding, you had nothing.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's the summary. I love it.
Dead on accurate. Yep. Dead on accurate. Some of the stuff that they reported was like, they wouldn't look me in the eye. They kept staring at my scar. The scar made them obviously uncomfortable. Like they would talk about this person fixating on the scar on their face, and they were. It's interesting, and it's all because the participants themselves, believed that they had this disfigurement. It's because their belief was that they had this thing, and so they then interpreted the other person's actions to sort of affirm their own beliefs. It's very similar to what we just saw in the Rosenhan experiment, right? Like you're seeing you're taking something that's an expectation, and then you're seeing other things that confirm it and affirm it in your mind. It's an affirmation bias, is what it really is.
Yeah, but it's the other side of the coin. The
Yeah.
the other people were saying, "Oh, you must be crazy," whereas here there was like, "Oh, they must think I'm crazy." It
Yep.
was kinda it's the difference in the viewpoint, but showed essentially the same behavior when the roles are reversed, when the sort of the I guess, what would you call it? Like, the subject and the predicate
There you go.
are
Yep.
reversed, it's essentially the same reaction.
Yeah. Oh, and it helps to show a lot of it helps to explain a lot of the mechanisms behind, how we act in society in general, especially when you look at law enforcement interactions and sort of the things that you hear all the time about, cops like to do X and cops often do Y and cops it's something that I saw a lot in law enforcement and I've always taken as a societal thing. There's like an expectation bias that, you're expecting a certain type of judgment. And then so you start noticing things that make you think it's really happening, even if it's not. When you expect to be treated a certain way, you start acting as though you're already being treated that way. Attribution bias is the big one. It's one of the big ones that came out of this. And it's, ambiguous behaviors, strange, random, ambiguous behaviors people will often attribute them to a predetermined prejudice in their mind. They're going to say this person is going to have a prejudice against me because of this. So then anything they see that's unattributable to something empirical, they're going to say it's because of that prejudice. So what we see a lot in the news today is this officer said this or did this because of the color of my skin, or because of the neighborhood he got me in, or because of the shirt that I wore. Any ambiguous behavior, if you already have this expectation bias, you're going to attribute all these things you can't explain to that bias. And then it creates the whole self-fulfilling prophecy thing that we see all the time. And it's really interesting how all of this stuff plays into sociology, not just psychology, but like sociology and how we actually interact with each other. And I don't know, it's fascinating. I love psychology. I could do a whole podcast just on psychology, and I'd want to have a different expert on every
I
day
think
that can
you are.
just one episode. But I'd want to be on the learning end of it. I'd want to have someone come on who actually has a better learning of this and could explain this stuff to me in a more interesting way, in a more nuanced manner. And it'd be fun to just talk about this stuff and what I find interesting and ask them questions, and then let someone learn me a little bit. That would be good.
Well, the
Doug, go get
scars
educated.
Oh, okay. Be right back. Was it like SpongeBob when it's like 12 hours later?
Yeah, that's the one.
The scars one was especially fun for me though because, hey, guess what? I have a massive effing scar on my chest, which most of the time you don't see.
Right.
But when you're at a setting like the pool or a locker room or whatever, when I first had this scar as a, young, like 20 slash early 20s man, the first couple of reactions I saw is people's eyes got like bulging out of their head when they catch a glimpse of it. It was like, holy shit. You could
Yep.
see they were just like, what the fuck happened to that guy? And I'll admit the first couple of times I was kind of like, I'm still a human. Like that was my first thought was I'm not some I don't know, like I don't know what people thought of me, but I felt like, I'm normal just like you guys.
Yeah.
And then it's just a really random thing, but it stuck out to me so much. I was, of course, doing what young men do, playing beer pong with some coworkers from my restaurant days.
I've never played beer
Um,
pong.
Not once.
Not once.
Are you serious?
Yeah, never played beer pong.
Like you're joking, right?
No, I'm dead serious.
How?
I don't
Like
know.
how did you
Well, I
not
mean,
like accidentally?
I didn't
How
start
did you
drinking
not?
until I was 21, so I mean,
Same.
there's that. But then when I was 21, I was in the army and I was, out of the barracks by the time I was 21 because I got my sergeant stripes and I got off-base housing, and I was just more interested in
You had to
women
be a
than I was.
responsible leader
No, I wasn't
early on.
responsible. No, I was just chasing tail instead of chasing being drunk.
Well,
So,
okay, you had the whole Germany story where you like messed up your ankle, like, but
mm,
you never
yeah,
like literally. I mean, you when you're younger and drinking with any frequency, you can like trip and accidentally start playing a beer pong game. Like,
no,
I
no, I
I
never did. No,
really.
yeah,
Honestly, I respect you a little bit less now, I
that's
think.
fair. Yeah,
I
that's
thought
fair.
you were social and experienced and cultured, but I guess not.
I guess not. No.
Well, anyway, playing a beer pong game in, a apartment garage kinda deal with some people that I worked with, and the one of them just goes, "Oh, yeah, hey, you had that surgery, right?" And I'm like, "Yes." And, "Can I see the scar?"
Yep. You know it's coming
"Okay."
next.
Right, so pull up the shirt and show it, and I'll try to recreate it as best I can. the exact reaction this guy gave was, "Oh, shit, that's a huge scar. You know what you should do? You should go to the gym and get super jacked, like work your ass off every single day, just lifting as much as you can and get super pumped, dude. And then when it's summer, because it was like January when he saw this thing or whatever. And
Sure.
then when it's summer, you go to the pool and you take off your shirt and you just start walking around and just make sure everybody sees that fucking scar." And he goes, "And then when a little kid walks up to you and goes, 'Hey, mister, where'd you get that scar?' You whirl around on him and you yell, 'War!' And then you walk away."
That's a whole lot of work for not a really good payoff.
But I sat there and I was like, "You know what? Gordon thinks this is fucking awesome." This is
Yep.
what he thinks. Like, what a great thing. And from then on, I was
Yeah.
like, "You know what? This is fucking cool."
Yep.
And so I've kind of always now I get to use it to my advantage. Like I had one guy that I worked with at the same place later. He was talking about getting bitten by a shark, whatever, when he was younger,
Yep.
which I thought was cool. I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy."
That's pretty badass.
And he goes, "Yeah, but it's not like heart surgery or something, you know?" And he like hit me and walked off. And at the end of the shift 2 hours later, I was like, "Hey, Brett." And I showed him my scar and he thought he like offended me. He was like, "Oh shit, dude, I'm so
Right.
sorry. I had no idea."
Yep.
I'm like, "That's fine. Just thought I'd get you."
And you're nicer than me, 'cause I'd have been like, "You did. Don't do it again." Like, I'd have played it up. If you know what's good for you.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. I don't know. I always thought it was kinda cool, and, like, sometimes I realize it's kinda poking up out of the top, and I'm like, "Well, that's why they look like they weren't making as much eye contact." But I do the same thing.
yeah.
Like, I
Yep.
felt like this person wasn't really engaged with me, and then I realized the top of my scar is kinda sticking out of the top of my shirt maybe on a collared shirt, so I'm like, maybe they were looking at the scar."
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
But they probably weren't.
They
They
probably weren't.
probably just I was probably just boring.
Yeah. I think it's just, the takeaway from this is to realize that, how
Yes.
you think people see you changes how you experience every social dynamic you're in, like everything. How you think they
Yes.
see you changes how you perceive things. And that plays roles in everything from, body image issues to racial discrimination expectations to, workplace interactions like imposter syndrome, social anxiety, like all of these things. It's actually how you think people see you. It's your bias in the first place. And what you think they're doing is actually a bigger force in what's really happening than the truth of what's happening. It's really your perception that is the biggest force in a lot of this stuff. So I think that's something to take away from this. Keep that in mind. Most people just don't care as much as you think they do about whatever you think they care about. That's just what it is. There was an experiment done later to kind of replicate this, and I can't remember what that one was, but essentially they had, I think it was college professors, maybe it was high school teachers, I think it was college professors, but they put them all in like what they decided would be very embarrassing shirts to wear into class that day. Like I think it was Barry Manilow was what they had them wear, and they asked them ahead of time, "How do you think the students are going to react to this?" And like every one of them said, "Oh, the students are going to clown me for this, and they're going to judge me for this, and they're going to think this is silly. They're going to not pay attention. They're going to be giggling and snarky behind their hands." And I think the predictions were like anywhere from like 50. They said like 50 to 75% of the students are going to judge me for this and hold this against me. And then afterward, like they recorded the interaction, and at the end of the day, it was like 25% of the students even noticed. And the teachers came out and they were like, "Oh yeah, they definitely judged me for this, and it changed this interaction." But it didn't. It was all the teacher's bias. And these are educated teachers who knew what was going on going in, and they still fell prey to it. It reinforces the lesson that your expectation plays a much larger role in social interactions than anything else. So go into things with an open mind, go into things with a positive mindset, expect positive things, and life will be better. And play beer pong, because then you won't be judged
No,
by Doug years
you
later for
can't.
not playing beer pong.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's the only thing you're allowed to say, though. Otherwise, you don't
Yeah.
know what it's like.
Right, exactly. No,
You have
I'm
no
I'm
opinion.
I'm talking about from a purely sociological and
That
psychological
is you
perspective,
can
you should
hang
play
your
beer
hat on
pong.
that. I will judge you. An
Yeah,
external
see?
person will judge you for
There
that.
you go. Done.
Yes.
Alright, I
Ah,
think we're coming up on an hour.
I know. I had something else that I was gonna say from that, though, and now I lost it
Damn
because you got me distracted with Barry Manilow shirt, so it was kinda distracting.
it. And it might not have been Barry Manilow, it might have been someone
Oh,
else
I
that
remember what it
was
was now. But, yeah, I remember what it
perfect.
was now. Lou Holtz quote. fits this best. It's a video floating around out there. I think it's like a 17-minute. He's giving the commencement speech at Franciscan University, I think.
Okay.
And 17 minutes sounds long. Yes, it's long. It's actually just a good speech though. Like it'll fly by if you're actually watching it. But one thing he says in there, one of his bits of advice he gives the graduates, he says, "Don't tell people your problems. Did you know that 90% of people don't care? And then the other 10% are glad you have them. So don't tell people your problems. It's just
Okay.
not going to get you anything." And yeah, I was like, you know what? That's completely true. No one gives a shit. Even if they act like they give a shit, most of those people are just trying to do the socially acceptable thing. They're going to forget that you told them that
Yeah.
in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if they don't care. And if they do care, they're going to try to use it against you in social status or pecking order or whatever. So, yeah, I just remember that's exactly perfect for this. Most people just are worried about their own stuff and they're not busy looking at you.
Yeah. That makes sense. And it's accurate and it's honest and it's healthy to understand that going into things.
Agreed.
Uh,
All right. Are we going to do jokes or are we
y-
just doing
yeah.
other things?
I guess we'll talk about the back rooms later.
Oh gosh, I forgot about the Backrooms.
That'll be a long conversation, I think, because it's a fun one.
Well, with editing, we probably have about 30 minutes for it to be pared down to an hour.
I don't know. I feel like we've been
Will
going
that
long enough
actually
for
be
that.
a long conversation? I don't think it's a long conversation. I think it's
Okay.
utterly terrifying,
Okay. Let's just
but
go
I
then.
don't think it's a long. I think
All right. Let's do it.
the Backrooms.
Yep.
Once again, Tom is probably better at this than I am, but the
Oh, that goes
Backrooms,
unsaid. Yep.
obviously, the Backrooms are what you'd call a liminal space, the in-between space between reality and not reality, or between realities. I mean, people have some different theories on it,
Yep.
but the idea is that sort of Narnia style. You can sort of access the Backrooms in certain ways or at certain points in our world.
Yep.
And the Backrooms basically picture 70s or 80s style office spaces, but no furniture, just kind of the yellowish, off-whitish, you know, sad colored walls, carpet, some of them have acoustic panel ceiling tiles, like, fluorescent lighting, stuff like that. And you just walk around basically endless office building. I think what some theory said 600 million square feet or miles or something like that of space estimated in the theory. And some people report that once you're in there, you can't get out. You feel like you're alone, maybe you're not. Some people claim that you can access them and then get out, but it's harder to get out each time you're there. And that's sort of the premise. You've probably seen videos of it. And, people put them up on the internet. Just look up the Backrooms and you'll just kind of see it for what it is. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Tom, because, yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if I'm describing it exactly quite right.
Well, there's no way to do it
Sort of
exactly
urban
right.
legend.
Right.
Well,
So
right.
you did a
Fair.
very good job, but there's no way to do it exactly right because honestly, I mean, we don't even know where it really came from, except from like some 4chan post like 8 or 9 years ago. But no one knows like where the idea really came from. You struck it right when you said it has to do with like liminal spaces and liminal horror. So a liminal space is essentially anything that looks like reality but is off in a way that's unsettling. And usually it's described as, a place that should be full of people but is not. That's usually what people are talking about. So like an empty mall or an airport at like 3 in the morning when there's no one there. School hallways, if you ever like snuck into a school at night when there was no
Oh,
janitors,
yeah.
no one in there. Off,
Basically, think Life After People. If you saw the
yeah,
Life After People show, it's kind of like that thought.
yeah, yep. And that's it. Your brain kind of projects there are people here. There should be people here, but then there aren't, and it's quiet and it's still, and there's a lack of life. And that's what a liminal space is usually kind of seen as. The one recommendation I will make on this is go watch the Y Files episode on this. It was probably 3-ish years ago they did one on this. It is one of the best things I've ever seen on liminal spaces, and it's how I first learned about the Backrooms. And the Y Files is just a fantastic podcast anyway. Like, it's really, really fascinating. But if you go and you look at that, it talks about this. They do a whole thing on liminal spaces and other people who do their own take on it. People who are posting videos that are saying, hey, like, whoops, I slipped through realities and I'm in a world where I'm the only human left. And it's videos of them walking through like empty sports stadiums and in Barcelona streets with no traffic and no people. And it's a really fun story to cover. But the back rooms are essentially a liminal space where the idea is that you can like, I think they say no clip is what they call it. Essentially, reality has like these blips, these glitches, and you can slip through them and fall into an alternate dimension or an alternate reality. And one of the ones you can fall into is the back rooms. And it's basically endless, limitless, never ending. I can't think of any other really good synonyms for this. It's an office space, like Doug said. There are no windows, there's no exit. It's just nonstop office space with like ugly yellow wallpaper, like from one of the greatest short stories ever written, by the way, the yellow wallpaper. But it's this ugly yellow wallpaper, usually, and this faded shag carpet, like buzzing fluorescent lights that are just kind of humming and flickering the whole time. And it's just this place you can't get out of. And that's essentially what the Backrooms was at first, was somebody kind of saying, yeah, I stumbled into this reality, and they did some fun videos. And eventually it became like this creepypasta, urban myth, urban legend horror, online horror genre, where people started adding things like there's a monster that lives there and it tracks you. And if you're not careful, it'll find you. If you hear something else walking in the back rooms, you need to stand still and hide before it finds you. And people eventually put like wicked evil canine dogs like hellhounds in the place. And it's evolved over time. So to say what it is exactly is hard because it's just evolved with pop culture over the last 7 or 8 or 9 years. And it's become so much more than what it originally was. But now they're finally making a movie out of it with one of the people who kind of initially springboarded this thing and progressed it.
It's
and
basically a modern urban legend, sort of. Like
yeah.
we don't call them that anymore, but that's essentially what it is.
Yep. It's like Slender Man, but it's more psychological horror, and I think it's going to be exciting. But the Y Files is AJ is the host. He's fantastic. It's a great show, and their episode on this is one of my favorite podcast episodes of like all podcasts of all time. It's really, really fascinating, and it's really, really cool. Yeah, and Hecklefish is always fun to listen to. So he's a fun little co-host on the show. But yep, liminal spaces, the back doors, fantastic. Or the back rooms, fantastic. Sorry, I didn't mean the back doors. That's a segue to the Bonnie Blue.
That's a segue to the Bonnie Blue.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reason the back rooms hits home with a lot of people is most people, by the time they've hit adult age, they've been somewhere that looks like those rooms.
Yep.
Just some crappy old office building, or even just a crappy office like in an industrial building. Like you just kind of end up there because of visiting somewhere or buying something from a store that's not a regular retail store or whatever, picking something up, from a distributor, or your dad or your uncle works there or something like that. Like everyone's seen a space that looks like that.
Yeah.
And so it is very familiar, but no furniture, no people. It's already kind of sad to begin with. It's not modern, and I think that's why it registers so well. But yeah, I heard the stuff about the monsters, and it was kind of like less scary. Like it was less realistic, if you will, when there were hellhounds and monsters in it and stuff like that. That made less sense to me. Like, well, why is there one monster?
Yep.
Why aren't there 8 monsters or 72 monsters? Like it feels like it should be the upside down where there's a bunch of demogorgons everywhere. Like that makes more sense to me than 1.
Yeah.
It should be 0 or it should be like 70.
Yeah. Or maybe there's just one who's so badass he ate all the other monsters. He's the only one left. I kind of like that. He's the alpha monster.
Maybe, but he ate even though he doesn't need to eat to survive because this is a reality with otherwise nothing.
Well, maybe how people are slipping into the back rooms is he gets hungry, he pulls someone in.
It has to be, or
every time he gets hungry,
like Jumper. It has to be enough people slipping through that he's able to subsist. But that still seems like that now we're adding on things that.
And that's how it grows, baby.
I know, but I think
it's pasta grows.
But I think it's better when it's just the space because that makes way more sense to me if just having a space. Then you have to add on more rules. Now it gets more identifiable, and you're always afraid of what you don't understand.
Yeah.
So when there's less in the space, it's less understandable, more fearful. I think it's scarier to be stuck somewhere and being like, well, I'm going to starve here. Or even worse, I'm not starving because clearly the space doesn't require hunger. I'm going to be here forever. I mentioned it on one of our past episodes.
The immortality thing, yeah.
Yeah, if you live forever, It's like, oh, everyone I love is dead. The earth has been gone, exploded for 1,000,000 years, and it's still the very beginning of my life.
Yep.
Like just
And you know what?
terrifying.
It's purgatory is what it is. It's essentially purgatory at this point. It's somewhere you're going to be
Not a
forever.
Christian one.
It's well, sure, but you're
Unless,
you're completely isolated. It's endless. You're alone. I mean,
yeah,
it's all of these awful things that kind of resonate with the concept of purgatory.
I think so. And from a
If you want,
philosophical perspective, it's great because there is a possible world that's this.
yeah. If you want to watch something fun on this, I had to Google it because I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember the creator's name, but I found it. The name is Kane Pixels. Is the YouTube creator, and the short room that he created on the Backrooms is called The Backrooms Found Footage, and he made it to look very realistic, and it was really neat. Like this whole thing he did, it was I think it was the one that was probably featured in the Y-Files episode because this is the one I was thinking of. And he did a great job making this video out of it, and it's easy to immerse yourself in it, and it's fun.
Probably
And
the
it
one
gives you an
you've
idea.
seen if you've heard about this at all. But
Probably. Well, there's so many versions now that you could have seen anything.
yeah.
I mean, there's just so many now.
So riddle me this time because I haven't done as deep of a dive as I normally do on this. How do you get into the back rooms? Do you like go through the wrong door or do you just like fall through the pavement somewhere when you're walking? Like,
So they
or
call
is
it
that another one of the
right. Well,
things?
they call it glitching or no clipping, and
Right.
essentially like it's a concept that they stole from video games, right? Like that's kind of the premise for this. The whole pop culture reference is that
Okay.
we're living realities are infinite and they're not all what we think, and kind of a matrix style approach where you can glitch out of one. And so a lot of times people, that falling feeling you get before you fall asleep, you're like in bed and you're lying down, but all of a sudden as you're falling asleep, you feel like you're falling and you really feel like it.
Right.
Something like that happens and you can fall through your bed. You can fall through a floor. You could accidentally walk through a wall. Like there's a glitch as you're walking up and you trip, and instead of hitting the wall, you glitch into this other reality. Maybe there's a door that you look that doesn't look like it should be there, and you walk through it because you're curious. There wasn't a door there before. And then all of a sudden you're not here anymore. That door took you into the back rooms. So there's all kinds of ways you get there, but essentially it's a glitch in reality. It's this blip that isn't right. And then you no clip to take it from the video game, and you just appear in the back rooms.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, happy to help.
Because I'd only heard the weird door thing. Like you happen to get somewhere where you're sort of not supposed to be somehow, and then you can suddenly walk around on nothing or in whatever. So
Yeah, the physics are different. Everything's changed. Yeah, but yep.
no, cool.
So speaking of back rooms, we're going to start
Back
calling this section
shots.
back shots. Yep. We're going to start calling this part of the show, the segment. That's the word I couldn't think of.
The segment.
We're just going to call this Hey John. And today's Hey John has a double Bonnie Blue update.
We need to have one of those cheesy recordings that goes, "Hello, hey John." Just play it every time.
I talked to him today
button.
and I said, hey, we want to have you on to give dad advice from someone who's not a dad. Like, I want to do this. And he was very excited about it. So we should plan to have him on here maybe 2 weeks to give dad advice because he'll give some stuff that'll make you think.
I'm down.
Okay. So Bonnie Blue update number 1. We talked about how she had the ultrasound, right?
Yes.
And there's a baby in there. Well, according to her Instagram.
Please sit down for this. It's going to be a total shock to you. Please sit down.
After the ultrasound, she then had sex with the doctor that gave her the ultrasound right there in the office. So this is something she announced on Instagram. She was very proud of this fact. In the awe and the wonder of the moment and realizing that she had created life and was bearing it within her, she was like, I just need one more shot.
Just like, so exciting.
Yeah.
I wonder if the doctor used the wand in all sorts of ways.
Maybe. I don't know.
I assume so.
I do know that he wore the blue mask that is becoming popular with Bonnie Blue patrons. Now they all wear a blue face mask. It looks like a mask from like Blue Man Group, like a ski mask, but it's blue. And they wear it over their face when they're in videos with her so they can't be recognized. Something she started doing because so many of these people are married and she didn't want to necessarily destroy their wedding. She wanted married men to feel comfortable coming to her.
She's a philanthropist, essentially.
Yep. She's doing it for the people.
So you know what? The Blue Man Group, this is just random, but it reminded me of
The Bonnie Blue Man group.
Well, right.
Oh, okay.
There
Live
was a
performance.
comedian a long time ago, like a decade plus probably ago, and he called himself the Amazing Jonathan.
Okay.
And he was like a Carrot Top-esque type of thing. He used props. A lot of his comedy was just, "Oop, whoop, sorry, wrong thing," like, kinda that kinda shtick.
Yep.
But he had an assistant who was this blonde, like, basically like, literally stupid, like, she couldn't get anything right, Marilyn
Kelly Bundy.
Monroe
Yeah. Okay.
type of thing. And there's one of his stand-up routines, there's one skit where she comes up holding Blue Man Group tickets or whatever, and he goes, "Holy cow, Blue Man Group." He goes, "How'd you get these?" And he pulls them away from her, and there's a bunch of blue paint right around her mouth. And that's been my association with the Blue Man Group ever since I saw that, was just, "Oh, well, everything's blue. Everything."
Well,
This
everything's
is the
Bonnie
same
Blue
group
now.
where this is the same guy where this same assistant walks out from stage left, and she's holding a golf ball and a garden hose, and she goes, "I did it."
Oh,
If you get that reference.
yes.
So I think that was right before the Blue Man Group, like, he set it up to give you that thought
Yep.
process.
Did you ever see the movie Basketball? Did you ever watch that?
Mhm. Yeah.
I
Long time
remember.
ago, one time, I may
Yep.
have played beer pong beforehand, so I may not remember all the details.
Okay. I just remember, so it's the creators of South Park created
Mhm.
this movie, and it's really, it's if you're into, like, young male humor, like sex and farts and, like, it's a funny
Sports
movie.
ball, yeah.
Sports Ball, yeah. But they cast Jenny McCarthy, I think, is who they had for the female lead, and she was basically playing this really stupid blonde gold digging woman who was just, like, trying to leech the benefits of dating this professional sports team owner and, like, was in it for his money. But she was really stupid. And so they'd make all these sexual innuendos and she would not understand them. And you didn't get to see it when it was said. You'd see the after effect, like you just said with the golf ball through the garden hose.
Yep.
You'd just see her in a scene all of a sudden and she'd have like silver lipstick on. And he'd be like, "Well, what why are your lips all silver?" And then she'd hold up this doorknob and she'd be like, "I told you I could get all the chrome off it this way." And he's like, "That's not what I meant." Or like she would shine something super shiny
Uh,
and be like, "I told you I could buff that." And he's like, "That's not what I meant." And you see all the sexual innuendos that she misunderstands after the fact, and it's the kind of the same thing. I gotta go watch that movie again. All right, so that's Bonnie Blue update number 1. Now, remember that I just mentioned this Bonnie Blue mask, right? This is an important thing for what we're now gonna call the Bonnie Blue Man group. Apparently, it's become more and more popular with the gentleman with whom she spends her time so that they can maintain their anonymity for legal
mhm.
reasons. There was a video that was
Social
released.
reasons.
Social reasons. There was
I
a
mean,
video that was
speaking of
released.
psychology, what do you think people will think of them?
There you go. What are your expectations? There was a group of Bonnie Blue men in a room together on a video, and it was when she was announcing her paternity test, and they're all wearing these blue masks. It's literally a group of, like, 60 guys in blue masks and watching her announce her pregnancy test, and it's essentially all these guys going, "Am I the dad?" And then one of them holds the pregnancy test up and has to, like, explain to these guys, "Let me explain to you what this is and how this works." Very well done, very funny. I did a quick search for it and couldn't find it. I saw it the date, like, it posted yesterday, I think, and I saw it and it cracked me up. It was very well done. If you have a chance, go find that, go watch it. I'll try to get a link in here. But they've really embraced this blue mask for Bonnie Blue's people. So, if you're interested in becoming a member of the patented here on this podcast just now, Bonnie Blue Man group, buy the mask and submit a video. We will help you send this to Bonnie Blue. I will write you a script if you're serious about doing it. I am all aboard with helping people reach out for this and maintain their anonymity. I'm going to help encourage some bad behavior here. If you want to apply to be a member of the Bonnie Blue Man group, we can work on this. We will write the script. All I ask is that you read it verbatim, and we'll even help you submit it. I'll do that.
Wow, you just hijacked this. In the
Of
past,
course I did.
someone very important in my life was like, "Not really sure I like the porn star discussion,"
Sure.
and now we're endorsing it. Good job,
Yeah.
Tom. Thank you.
Yes, I am.
I was gonna say the second update was actually this.
Oh,
from
good.
February 24th. Bonnie Blue confirms that the father of her child has left the country and stated he wants nothing to do with them after she got pregnant earlier this week.
Who could have seen that coming?
No, she did. But But how convenient. We talked about alimony, child support, those kinds of issues, and now she's trying to create a little digital footprint that says, "Well,
Mhm.
he's non-existent now. Don't try looking for him. He doesn't
Yep.
wanna be found. He wants to be left alone.
Yep.
God forbid."
And you know what? It's funny because as I was looking at the Bonnie Blue news updates for this episode, there are a lot of people out there who are like, "This is fake. Like, she's full of shit. This is just a new stunt. This is just a publicity stunt." Same thing we thought, especially when we were like, the timing doesn't
Right.
line up with the ultrasound and seeing it. I guess they did an interview with her and she talked about, she's trying to live healthier, and so she has her avocado toast in the morning and her pineapple juice, and then she takes a walk, and then she has avocado and chicken and something else for lunch because now she has a life inside of her she has to raise responsibly. But
What
she's
was she eating
talking
before?
right. I have
Real
no.
question, don't say sausage. Just kidding.
Well, I was gonna make a slightly cruder joke, but yeah.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, so I mean, more and more people are like, no, she's talking about how extreme her symptoms are already and all these things, and people are giving her a lot of public feedback saying, no, this timing doesn't work. I think you're full of it. I think it's a publicity stunt, and I just gotta say, it feels like another one of our predictions that probably is going to age well. Like we probably nailed another
Probably.
one.
Well, and you know what? How many reports are there? I know it's not everybody, but isn't there some percentage of women who are on the pill or other forms of birth control that when they come off of them, they report taking 4, 6, sometimes even like 8 or 12 months to feel quote normal and be able to
Yeah.
like have a regular cycle and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So if she removed birth control for this, her having all of these symptoms this early, like a lot of women don't have that.
Right.
Even if they are their biology is still messed up because the pill literally stops a biological process, so it takes a while to get your cycle back going and felt and predictable.
Well,
So, d
but
again,
also
just all these convenient things.
we don't know that she was on the pill. Like she might have had an
Well, if it could've been
IUD
something
or she might
it
have
could have
had something
been. Yeah,
else.
right,
But
fair.
I do remember like when we started trying to conceive, I feel like it was 3 to 6 months that we had to be off birth control completely. Like it was recommended. Before you start trying, you should be off birth control 3
Well,
to 6 months. Like I think that
and
was
in
the hormone regulation period was something
in
like that.
her line of work, though, too, like, "Oh, yeah, just 1?" You might be, like, popping like a
Yeah.
mental patient. You might be popping those pills. So, I don't know. I like the post, though, from a PR standpoint because saying, "Hey, the father's left the country," it's not just that he's not gonna be around, he doesn't wanna be found, you're not gonna find him, like, it kinda sets up that plausible deniability,
Yep.
but it also implies we know who the father is.
Yep.
So, anyone else who might actually have a stake to anything down the road in the future, don't try it.
Yep. I agree.
If some magic happens and she ends up pregnant later or, has an abortion later, no one try anything. We
Yep.
already know who it is.
And if you want to find the silver lining of this, John,
Mm,
baby daddy doesn't want to be involved. This is your opportunity to step up. You
swoop
could
in.
you could be the daddy in this little boy's life. You could do it.
Boy,
Well, maybe it's a girl, I don't know.
you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you're
It
right.
would be really funny if she said something like that, though, and it'd be like, "Oh, well, now we know you're."
All right, dad jokes before I fall asleep.
Yeah, of course, sure. I've got a couple of long ones again, though. We waited long enough. I've got
Oh,
them.
all right, I'm falling asleep. Go ahead.
All right. Dave was bragging to his boss one day. I know everyone there is to know. Just name someone, anyone, and I know them. Tired of his boasting, his boss calls his bluff. Okay, Dave, how about Tom Cruise? No dramas, boss. Tom and I are old friends, and I can prove it. So Dave and his boss fly out to Hollywood and knock on Tom Cruise's door, and Tom Cruise shouts, Dave, what's happening? Great to see you. Come on in for a beer. Although impressed, Dave's boss is still skeptical. After they leave Cruz's house, he tells Dave that he thinks Dave's knowing Cruz was just lucky. No, just name anyone else, Dave says. Ex-President Obama, his boss quickly retorts. Yup, Dave says, old buddies, let's fly out to Washington. And off they go. Obama spots Dave in Washington and motions him and his boss over, saying, Dave, what a surprise. I was just on my way to a meeting, but you and your friend come on in and let's have a beer first and catch up. Well, the boss is very shaken by now, but still not totally convinced. After they leave Washington, he expresses his doubts to Dave, who again implores him to name anyone else. Pope Francis, his boss replies. Sure, says Dave. I've known the Pope for years, so off they fly to Rome. Dave and his boss are assembled with the masses at the Vatican's St. Peter's Square when Dave says, this will never work. I can't catch the Pope's eye among all these people. Tell you what, I know all the guards, so let me just go upstairs and I'll come out on the balcony with the Pope. He disappears into the crowd headed towards the Vatican. Sure enough, half an hour later, Dave emerges with the Pope on the balcony. But by the time Dave returns, he finds that his boss has had a heart attack and is surrounded by paramedics. Making his way to his boss's side, Dave asks him, what happened? His boss looks up and says, that was the final straw. You and the Pope came out onto the balcony, and the man next to me said, who the fuck is on the balcony with Dave?
That's good. Yeah, that one's good. That was worth the wait.
Yeah, it was good. All right. I have one more, but I'll just treat you to two today. How about that?
All right.
A farmer goes out and buys a new young rooster. As soon as he brings him home, the young rooster rushes and screws all 150 of the farmer's hens. The farmer is impressed. You know this one?
I think I've told this one on the cast. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, really?
In case I'm wrong, keep going.
You probably have. Well, it's good. It's worth a repeat. It's still a good joke. Then I'll have to tell a third one if you already told it.
I'm fairly confident I've told this one, but
you probably have. See, this is my mini strokes again.
That's okay.
It's just that's it.
That's not true. You were doing this before you had mini strokes.
Well, that's true, but now it's worse, and I'm going to use it as a crutch. Psychology. Let me have it.
So rooster's humping everything it can see.
The farmer is impressed. At lunchtime, the young rooster again screws all 150 hens. The farmer is not just impressed anymore, he is worried. Next morning, not only is the rooster screwing the hens, but he's screwing the turkeys, ducks, even the cows. Later, the farmer looks out into the barnyard and finds the rooster stretched out, limp as a rag, his eyes closed, dead and vultures circling overhead. The farmer runs out, looks down at the young rooster's limp body and says, you deserved it, you horny bastard. And the young rooster opens one eye, points up at the vultures with his wing and says, they're about to land.
That's a good one.
It is a good one. All right, last one. And again, with my luck, we probably told this somewhere somehow. A woman brings a very limp duck, not a typo, a duck, because you and I are next to each other on the keyboard, into a veterinarian's office. She lays the bird on the table. The vet listens to its chest with a stethoscope, pauses, then shakes his head. I'm sorry, he says. Your duck, Cuddles, has passed away. The woman gasps. Are you sure? Yes, says the vet. Your duck is dead. How can you be so certain, she demands. You haven't run any tests. What if he's just in a coma? The vet sighs and leaves the room. A few minutes later, he returns with a black Labrador. The dog stands on its hind legs, places its paws on the table, and sniffs the duck carefully from beak to tail. Then it looks at the vet sadly and shakes its head. The vet nods and escorts the dog out. Moments later, he comes back with a cat. The cat jumps onto the table, delicately sniffs the duck from head to foot, then sits back, shakes its head, and lets out a soft meow before strolling out. The vet looked at the woman and said, I'm sorry, but as I said, this is most definitely 100% certifiably a dead duck. The vet turned to his computer terminal, hit a few keys, and produced a bill, which he handed to the woman. The duck's owner, still in shock, took the bill. $1,500? She cried. $1,500 just to tell me my duck is dead? The vet shrugged. I'm sorry, if you had just taken my word for it, the bill would have been $50. But with the lab report and the CAT scan, it's now $1,500.
Yep.
Thanks. Your turn.
All right. So I didn't have any theme jokes for tonight, and I feel kind of sad about that. Makes me
no psycho jokes.
No. I told a lot of psychology jokes on another episode, and I sat down and started trying to make a list. And I'm like, I feel like I've told all these before, and I went back, and it turns out I did. So it was kind of a bummer, but I didn't want to pull a Doug and repeat my jokes. So I do have a doctor joke.
I mean, I had a real psycho thing where this one guy was like ready to fight when something was going in a bar, and he broke a pool cue over his knee, like ready to go. And everything stopped, and like they were like, "No, no, no, he's not angry at you," and he was like, "Oh, okay," and he's like went back to normal. I was like, "You're about to shank somebody, dude."
With a pool cue.
You're right.
Did you know that 9 out of 10 doctors recommend children drink water instead of soda?
Sure.
That other doctor lives in Flint, Michigan.
That's not even a joke. That might be real.
That might be real. So I'm going to use the name Dave because he was in your joke.
Everybody knows Dave.
Everybody knows Dave, and Dave dies, and Dave goes to hell. And
that's sad.
it is sad.
You think he would? He knows God. You think
Well,
he'd like get in?
he knows Satan too is the problem because he knows everything.
That's true.
You know,
That's a good point.
so he gets there, and Satan sees him, and Satan says, "Hey, Dave," and kind of laughs at him and says, I didn't think you'd end up in hell. You know everybody. How'd you end up here?
Right.
Yeah, congratulations. I guess you wasted your pitiful life. And Dave looks at him and says, "Yeah, well, at least I'm not an adult living in my dad's basement." That one I figured was a Doug joke. I thought Doug would like
that's
that one.
good. That has layers to it.
It does. So couple gets married, and on the wedding night, the groom, they're being intimate, and when they're done, the groom rolls over and he says, "Honey, I just got to know, am I your first?" And she rolls back over and looks in his eyes and says, "Why does everyone keep asking me that?"
Take off your ski mask and talk to me.
Your blue mask. All right, one more. We've talked about my job here a bit, and we've talked about career paths a bit. I know I never talk a lot about the details, but
Un poquito.
I am making an announcement here on the podcast first. I am accepting a new job.
How dare you?
I know.
I was emotionally and mentally unprepared. Both of the bad things.
I haven't even told my coworkers yet. So this is the first
socially unprepared. That's the trifecta.
It's a job that this podcast will appreciate with all the animal jokes that we make and all the animal things we talk about. I took a job at the local zoo at Providence. I'll be working at the Roger Wilcox Zoo.
What?
Yeah,
nice.
It's a pay cut, but it's going to be more fun and more interesting. I'm going to be circumcising elephants.
I'm going to be making a lot of Wilcox jokes.
And that's fine. That's fine. Since I'm circumcising elephants,
he
like
will
Wilcox
circumcise the
right.
cocks. Yeah.
So the pay isn't great, but the tips are huge. And I'm really looking forward to it.
The problem is that elephants never forget. You're going to be in danger. You're going to be that African lady that got stomped on after she died.
It's possible. I should be very careful with the blade, I suppose.
You should be careful with a lot of things.
All right. I feel like the punchline there kind of went under the radar. So I'll tell another one instead because I can't end on a joke where the punchline just goes under the radar. If you want to rewind that 15 seconds and listen, people, it was a good one, I promise. Yeah.
What? Because the tips are huge?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But come on. The tipping economy is ruining everything.
Probably not with elephant circumcisions. I think that's still, yeah, anyway. Did you ever stop and think about the adopted kids with like same-sex couples? Did you ever stop and think about what that's like for the kids? It's a conversation I had, and I'm curious if you've ever stopped and thought about it.
The problem is that I actually have, like, seriously, not even in a joke fashion. But
yeah, so I was talking about it with someone at work 2 days ago. 2 days ago, the end of a government call, and everyone disconnects except me and the person hosting the call. And this is something that came up, and he knows somebody, and he started talking about it. He goes, "You have a podcast about parenting, right?" And I was like, "Well, not exactly. It's two dads talking. It's more like two dads worked their butt off all day and then met at a bar." And then just like talked about what was going on in the news or whatever crazy conspiracy theory they had and like shared stories about what they screwed up. So it's not really parenting advice. It's kind of like two dads like letting loose with a beer afterwards, kind of the vibe. He's like, "Okay." He goes, "So what do you think about same-sex couples like adopting kids?" And it was an interesting conversation. And where I landed is that I kind of feel bad for them. And
we talked about it, I think, a little briefly at one point, forever ago. I think so.
Oh, I don't remember that. Yeah, I decided
I made the distinct point of like it probably isn't actually ideal, but as long as that's a better option than no parents. Probably.
Yes, we did talk in the What is a Woman episode. We did say that. Yeah, no, I fell in a different position on this, and I decided that I don't think it's a bad situation for them. I feel bad for them because depending on whether you've got like 2 men or 2 women who adopted you, either way, you've got like a really untenable situation for a kid. Like you either have to put up with twice the number of dad jokes, which my kids already can't deal with, just mine, or you're stuck in this endless loop of go ask your mother, which is also unpleasant. So we decided that I feel bad for these kids in same-sex marriages for that reason. And I think that's worthy of my final joke then. I'll go with that. Yeah.
Well, now I'm just despondent.
No, I'm sorry.
This is the rest of my night now.
I didn't mention Nazis this whole episode, so we shouldn't be canceled until right now, which is good.
Yeah, thank you for Cook's Law.
You're welcome. All right, I have no dad homework for this week. I did not think that far ahead. I got nothing.
Okay.
No, screw that. I have something. Send us a dad joke.
Something.
Send us dad jokes. I want to hear dad jokes.
Not about elephant penises.
Why not? All right, fine. Send us a truncated dad joke, something smaller, something a little different. But send us dad jokes. Facebook, 2dtpod@gmail.com. Wherever you got them, send us a dad joke. I want some listener jokes to work into this. And John, we're going to get you on here for some non-dad advice. I'm excited about that. And Bonnie, if you're looking for a surrogate or for a stand-in father, I know a guy.
Oh,
well, words are not my strong suit this time of night.
I'm telling your wife. This is more
it's
important.
Not me. It's going to be John. I'm going to hook her up with a good dose of John.
Ski Mask says otherwise. I need to save your household. I'm going to do it.
Good luck. To save my household for me, it's going to take a lot more than one person, unfortunately.
And some non-slip sticky pads on your stairs.
Yes, those cement stairs. Gosh. I took a fall this week at the gym and messed up my good leg. So my whole right leg now is like one giant swollen bruise and scuff marks and friction scratches and such a mess. It's not even the knee they want to operate on. All right. Don't mess up your knees. Send us dad jokes. Don't buy a blue mask. That should keep you mostly out of trouble.
Until it gets endorsed by Tom, apparently.
Yep. And if you know Dave, let us know you know Dave. Let us know how you know Dave.
No, you don't need to know that. Everybody knows Dave.
Okay, so just tell us how you know Dave. That one.
Bye, Felicia.
Go ahead, go.